Hello and welcome to episode number 265. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com, and I am Cornelius Fichtner. You are listening to one of our premium episodes. These are recorded and made available to only our premium subscribers. And yes, if you're hearing this, that means that's you. Thank you very much for your financial support of our podcast. In June of 2013, Bryan Barrow gave the project management presentation that he always wanted to give. It is titled The Project Manager's Playbook, and it compares many of the tactics and approaches used in American football to what all of us do on our projects, except that we wear a lot less protective gear. Bryan says that once you have seen his presentation, you will learn how to take a new project and deliver it with greater confidence, sense of purpose, and sheer fun than you thought possible. And of course, we hope to get that kind of motivation across to you as well in the coming minutes. And don't forget that Bryan will be speaking on April 29 at the 2014 Project Zone Congress in Frankfurt, Germany. So if you hear this interview before April of 2014, you can find out more at projectzonecongress.com. And now, get your project team ready. It's kickoff time, literally. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Bryan Barrow, project management consultant and speaker.
Hello, Bryan. Welcome back to the Project Management Podcast.
Hey, Cornelius. Great to talk to you again.
The Project Manager's Playbook is the title of our interview right now. So let's begin with the basics. What is it and how did it come to be?
Okay. I think of the Project Manager's Playbook as the collection of processes or activities that a project manager and the team will want to pursue in order to deliver a project successfully. And the reason it came about is that if we go back into the way back when machine, I started working on my first project in 1989. It was a disaster, by the way. But at the same that's one for maybe another conversation. But at the same time, I started playing American football. It's my favorite sport, and I started watching it in 1982. I was one of the horde of people who first started watching American football when Channel 4 in the UK started broadcasting. So I started playing then, and although I stopped for a while, I started and rejoined another team in 1991, and I then played for 3 seasons back to back. Now, all during that time, as I was advancing my career as a project manager, I was also learning more and more about American football, and one day it hit me that the two were exactly the same. The principles, the processes, the practices of planning and organising an American football game or a campaign is the same as organising a project.
Right. So I know that Prince 2 is big in the UK. You're not suggesting that Prince 2 should be replaced by American football, right?
No, not at all. All I'm saying is if we think about an American football game or an American football team, they're divided into 3 teams: an offensive team, a defensive team, and special teams. And the offensive team have their plays, what they're going to do, whether they're going to run with the ball or pass the ball or kick the ball. The defensive team will also have their plays, in terms of coverage, whether they're going to blitz, whether they're going to move back. They're always going to run those plays, and the plays that they're going to use will depend on where they are on the field. And the analogy I have is that when things are going well in your project, you want to keep repeating the same successful things. You want to keep moving forward. It's all about moving forward, gaining momentum, gaining yardage, maintaining positive progress. When things aren't going your way, you have to take a different approach. You have to do things to stop problems from getting worse, from losing momentum, from losing morale, and recovering momentum. So there are things that you'll do when you have the ball in American football, and there are things you will do when you don't have the ball. Similarly, there are things you will do when things are going your way in project management, and other things that you can do to regain possession and regain momentum in project management.
You originally started talking about the project manager's playbook in a talk that you first gave in June 2013. And what we want to do is we want to talk about that, use that talk as the basis for our discussion here. And you started out by with the topic, what's wrong with most projects today? So what is wrong with most projects today?
Well, I think there are a number of things with most projects today, but if we wrap it all up, and I won't want to go into the statistics, but far too many of our projects come in late and over budget if they are delivered at all. And even those that are delivered, sometimes the end result of the delivery is rejected by the community, by the users who are waiting for them. So there's a high track record of failure, particularly in the IT sector. So that tends to be what's wrong with projects. Now, some businesses, though, they never overcome a significant project setback. And again, we could go into details, but we don't really need to go into too much of that. But if we think about what sets successful projects apart, there's something very special there. And the successful projects tend to have the best plays, the strategies and tactics they're going to use to outwit their competition. They will have the best teams who know their plays inside out and are able to execute them, and they'll have the best attitude. Because all other things being equal, the team that has the best attitude will tend to go on and win.
Both projects and the game of American football, they start out at the beginning and you have to get the game underway. So what do you recommend in your playbook that we do as project managers to get the game underway?
Okay, well, if you look at an American football game, getting the game underway with a kickoff, the importance of the kickoff can't really be overstated, because the goal of kicking off the game is to get good field position, because with good field position comes an increased likelihood of scoring early. And in American football games, particularly if you look at the Super Bowls, the team that scores first tends to win the game. In projects, the thing about that is about making sure we have a good project kickoff meeting or kickoff workshop, bringing the team together, explaining what the project's about, why it's important, what success is going to be like, and what we need to do to deliver, so that we can come away from that workshop with an increased sense of the purpose, an increased sense of confidence about what we're trying to do, and increased commitment. So I would always advocate that project teams get together for a planning workshop so they can plan collaboratively. I happen to use index cards, as you know. I'm a big fan of that. It doesn't have to be that. It can be anything that you like, as long as we bring the team together so they can plan the project, meet each other, and start to work as a team. Because it's the teamwork that will spell the difference between success and failure ultimately.
And is that also the moment when you need to huddle up?
Oh, no, this comes later. So if we think about the kickoff workshop as the first key project activity, bringing the team together, that's the team that will huddle up later on. And when I talk about huddling up, this is about the importance of having regular team meetings as a way of enforcing and reinforcing the team working, as a way of measuring success and understanding where people are, and as a way of deciding what we want to do next. So I think it was back in, you had Jeffrey Steinke on your show, I think back in episode 255, and he talked about how to have better meetings. But nowadays, so many projects go ahead without a regular team meeting. So many projects use email to convey information. They will use reports to convey information, but without bringing people together in one place, in one time, so they all understand what's happening. So I really do stress the importance on my teams of huddling up. So I have a 1-hour meeting every week with my core team. The meeting is mandatory and it's minuted. It has the same agenda and it has the same expected outputs. And at the end of that 1 hour, we use that time to understand where we are versus where we want it to be. So are we on track or not? If we're not on track, what do we need to do? And by the end of that hour, in the same way that for an American football team, when they huddle up, they all know what the next play is going to be. So that meeting is about understanding what we're going to do next over the next week.
And then, of course, the big question for the next play is, are we going to run or are we going to pass the ball? How does that relate to project management?
Well, if we look at American football teams, the thing we're trying to do in the huddle is decide what we're going to do so that everybody can work in a coordinated way. And one of the key concerns for people, particularly if they're not used to American football, they always want to know why the game stops and starts so much. And the reason the game stops and starts so much is because at the end of every play, the referees, they want to measure yardage. Where is the ball? And for the team, they want to know where the ball is because they want to know what plays they really need to run. So if they've got good field position, if they've made most of the yards they need to make, they may be a bit more flexible about what they do next. So when I talk about deciding whether to run or pass, it's about, are we going to do what we plan to do, or do we need to change our plan in the light of experience? Because if we only refer to our plan, we will make mistakes. We'll do what we plan to do, not what we need to do.
You also say that you have to know when you need to fall on the ball. How does that relate to project management?
Okay, so the analogy I will draw, not an analogy, a story. In my first year playing American football, I played for a team. We weren't a very good team. We didn't have the best players, and I'll be honest, we didn't have the best players, but we had the best attitude. But I spent my first year mainly falling on the ball, and that was when the quarterback either tried to hand me the ball and we dropped it, one or other of us dropped it, or something went wrong. And there was often a tendency to try and pick the ball up and run with it. And that can create bigger problems. It's much better sometimes to fall on the ball to recover possession of the ball so that we don't make a bad problem worse. In projects, quite often, when things aren't going well, the project will try and run on. They'll try and fix the problem, even when there's no hope of fixing it. Sometimes, you have to recognize that things aren't working. You have to stop. You have to regroup. You might have to put the project into exception and then replan the project and decide whether it's worth going on. Or if it's not that bad, you just need to decide to stop doing an approach that's not working and decide an approach that is working. So before trying to dig yourself out of an even bigger hole, you need to sometimes stop and see what sort of problem, what sort of shape am I in, and how do I move on from here?
So far, we've only spoken about the offensive play in American football, but there's also the defensive play when you don't have the ball. Mm-hmm. So how does that relate to project management now?
Well, most people in the States will know that offense, it's an offense that wins a game, but it's defenses that win championships. And here this is talking about the importance of risk management in projects. All too often, projects don't do enough to manage and proactively manage the risks on their projects. So they're only planning for the positive scenarios, the positive outcomes. And so when things start to go against them, they don't know what to do. And by the time they work out what to do, they've lost time, they've lost momentum. They may have lost so much that they can't recover. So this is about making sure that before we get too far down the road of actively getting stuck into our projects, we spend a bit of time understanding, what the key risks are to the project, deciding what the contingency plans are going to be, ensuring that we have adequate contingency funding, but then also practicing, making sure that people understand that if something is going wrong, when they need to invoke their contingencies, so that when that does happen, they can move from offense to defense very, very quickly.
In your talk that you gave about this topic, about your experience, you had several takeaways. And let's go through these takeaways and see what we can learn from them. The first one you said is that more and more of our projects are now IT projects, but these have a poor track record of success. How can American football help us?
Well, if you look at the approach in American football, although at the start of the season, a coach will bring together his coaching staff, the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, all of the various coaches, they will devise the plays that they think they're going to run for the next season. And then they'll start to educate the players with those plays so that they understand them fully. But in a game, in any particular game, the play that they will select is the one that has the best chance of success. So it's about being very flexible. It's about knowing what you want to achieve, but recognizing that you may have to take different approaches depending on on circumstances to getting there. So that's why there's a big difference. It's not about being committed to one course of action. It's about being very, very practiced, very skilled, and understanding how to use multiple approaches to achieve an objective.
Our second takeaway is that the whole of your project comes down to how you get started.
Yes, it does, because too many projects, they sort of lurch into life. You might get a project being discussed for several weeks, maybe a few months, and it can take maybe 6-7 months before the project finally gets acceptance and approval. During all that time, people are thinking about it and talking about it and thinking about it and talking about it. But it can take another few months in some cases before the project really gets going. Some people refer to that as the fuzzy front end, the time it takes to get clarity. Often, by the time we get clarity about what we really need to do, we've lost so much time, the rest of the project is spent in a rush. On the other hand, if we start the project really well with a big bang, and we start off by saying, here's what the project's about, this is what the goal is, this is what success means for this project, let's get this planned, let's get the team working together. If we can do that, we can establish a really good high tempo, really enhanced confidence and great team working. And that sets the project up for success later on.
Takeaway number 3, if you want to improve decision-making, boost collaboration and build a winning mentality, hold a regular project team meeting with all of your key team members.
Yeah, I couldn't overemphasize the importance of a regular team get together to help to synchronize activity and ensure that people have a clear understanding of what needs to happen next. The perils, for the project can often start once they've had the kick-off workshop, where people go away to their respective areas and they start to work quite often on their own, and they can go out of sync. They cannot understand that things have changed. By bringing people together on a regular basis, we can make sure that we understand the potential changing context in which the project operates. We can make sure we've measured progress. So have we achieved the goals that we said we would over the last period since the last meeting? And we can understand and discuss how and what we're going to do next.
Takeaway number 4, success in projects comes down to moving forward continuously.
Yes, if we think about an American football game, a successful season comes down to winning the regular season, getting through the playoffs, and then ultimately winning the Super Bowl. But each and every game comes down to scoring more points than your opponent. In order to do that, you have to move the ball better than the opponent does. All of that comes down to moving a small leather ball 10 yards in 4 attempts. If you make those 4 attempts, you get another 4 attempts, you keep possession of the ball, and off you go. You'll move down the field. To my mind, projects are no different. As long as you're making forward progress at, or below the expected cost, you are in a good position to succeed. So it all comes down to making sure we've understood what it is we need to achieve. So in my team meetings, we do 2 things. One is we review progress against a plan. What did we say we were going to do last week, and what did we actually achieve? And the second one is, what are we going to do next week based on where we are now, and what do we need to do to make that successful?
And the final key takeaway is that your primary defense is your risk management planning. How does that relate to American football?
Well, how does a good defense relate to risk management? Well, if we think about the planning that we do in our kickoff workshop, quite often we will be planning for what we expect to do. We don't plan for what we don't expect to have to do. And this is where the risk management planning comes in. It's about understanding what might go wrong, what the risks are to our objectives. It's about identifying specific strategies and tactics that we need to employ to deal with these risks, to either prevent them or to contain them. So either to stop them from going wrong or to minimize the impact if they do go wrong. And the key difference here is about making sure we've understood and planned to do these things in advance so that we can get people to practice them. One of the reasons why American football is such a fascinating game is that it's all based on plays that people have conceived before the game. They don't try to make it up on the spot. They'll practice it in advance so that if they need to execute a play, they will call the play. The quarterback will say, check, red 98. And everybody knows that they're not going to run the play that they were going to. They're going to do something different. That's how it relates back to American football.
Very well then. So what is your conclusion when you compare American football to project management using your playbook? Is the conclusion that we all have to start playing American football now?
No. In my talks, I do say to people, and particularly in the UK, where American football is increasing popularity, but it's still not a really well-known game. I say by the end of my talk, you will not know anything more or much more about American football than you did at the start. But what you will know is you will understand the power of teamwork, the most powerful, the most fantastic thing, the most powerful force you could ever hope to wield in a project. It's mainly about teamwork as opposed to about plays. You can take a great team and you can give them terrible plays to run, and they might execute them really well just because they're a great team. So it's more about the power of teamwork than the power of American football.
All right, that's a touchdown. Bryan, thank you very much for stopping by again on our program.
Cornelius, it's been great talking to you.
And that was the Project Manager's Playbook with Bryan Barrow. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Are you PMP certified and you'd like to earn 37 PDUs quickly and for less than $5 per PDU? That's no problem with the Agile Prepcast. It not only prepares you for your PMI ACP exam, but also qualifies for a ton of PMP PDUs. Log on at agileprepcast.com/PDU for the details. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please do tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. Projects happen in 2 ways. 1, they are planned and then executed. Or 2, they are executed, stopped, planned, and then executed. Until next time.